All right, welcome back to the new Mindset Monday podcast brought to you by Wrestling Mindset, the only wrestling-specific mindset training program anywhere in the world. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and make sure to mention this podcast with Yianni D when you sign up for your free trial at wrestlingmindset.com. So we got Mindset Mike here, and I'm joined today by two very special people in the sport of wrestling. First, I'll be sharing the mic today with one of my favorite guys in wrestling. So let's welcome Mike Mal from Flows Behind the Dirt. Mike, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you very much, man. How's everything going?
Oh, man, things are good. You know, I know we're only 2.5 hours away between Houston and Austin, but it does feel like a world away in this big state of Texas. But it was nice to see you last week. The kids really appreciated your work.
Oh, good, man. I'm glad they get a bunch out of it every time I come down there. It's a lot of fun. You guys put together some cool practices and stuff like that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. You know, so just for those of you listening, Mike comes down to help me out at my club. And this past time, he actually worked with a bunch of the MMA fighters and showed them some little wrestling hacks to help them get to better positions. So the more fighters that can learn wrestling, the better. So, Mike, we appreciate you.
Yeah.
So Mike and I will be breaking it down today with your NCAA champion at 141 pounds and four-time New York State champion, Yianni Diakomihalis from Cornell. Yianni had one of the most memorable and probably most mentally tough performances in NCAA history. After tearing his ACL in the middle of the tournament, Yianni knocked off a two-time NCAA champion, avenged his only loss of the season, and then beat the number one seed in the same tournament. So, Yianni, thanks for making time for us today.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, I'm excited. So, you know, Yianni, you're exactly a week out of your ACL surgery. That's an injury that, you know, ends a lot of guys' careers, but you seem very positive about it. So what's your mindset going into this long rehab process to help you stay positive? And, you know, how did the first week of rehab go?
I mean, it's just this is the new reality, so you can't let it, you know, affect you, and you can't let it bother you because you can't change it. I can't, like, go back and uninjure my knee. So just got to attack it just like you're attacking training. And first week's going well so far. You know, actually, I've got pretty good range of motion. Swelling's coming down. So everything's going good. And it's just about continuing to attack it and, like, not letting this beat you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. You know, you beat guys in the tournament that most people couldn't beat with a fully healthy set of knees, let alone doing it with a freshly torn ACL. So tell us a little bit about how that happened. And how you and your coaches mentally got you past that, and how you were able to gut through the tournament.
Honestly, for me, you know, the Heil match, you don't really know what's going on. You just know, like, oh, man, I hurt my knee. Like, I got up, you know, knee buckled a little bit. You're kind of like, oh, what's going on? But, you know, it's like whatever's going on, your options are you can win the match or lose the match. And really, people don't care. People don't feel bad for you. Like, in the end, you know, 3 years from now, you're just going to look at the brackets and say, yeah, like, Yianni over Dean Heil, 6'5". There won't be an asterisk like Buddy tore his ACL. So it's just like, this is your new reality. You know, your knee's not 100%, and you got to make the adjustments, and don't even think about it when you're out there. It's just like, you know what changes you have to make to not further injure yourself and to get through the match. So you just tune it out and get to it.
Yeah.
Do you remember the exact point in the match?
Oh, yeah.
Where it hurt? Can you describe it?
So,
like, what time in the match?
So he took, like, a low double, and we get in a scramble, and he ends up on a single leg on my right leg, and I'm going rubber knee, and I actually get back to a sprawl. I chase, like, the cradle that I hit, and I go to limp leg out, and it's one of those things that I've done so many times where, like, you put your knee on the back of their head, and you use it as, like, a lever to pull your foot out. And it was, like, just this one time, I put my knee on the back of the head, and I don't know what happened, but it slipped, and it just, like, maybe he pulled it a different way or whatever happened. It's never happened to me before. But it slipped into his, like, shoulder and neck where I didn't have that lever anymore. So my legs now are just, like, super vulnerable. None of the muscles are getting activated. And he just, I don't know, I would have done the same thing. He just pulled my leg in. And, like, as soon as he did it, I felt the pop, and you're like, oh. Like, you don't know what happened, but you're like, oh, something happened. And then I went to get up, and my knee buckled a little bit. And you're like, okay, something's going on, but I don't really know what. And, like, I thought about taking injury time. And I looked over at Mike Gray. He's one of the coaches. You know, he's the coach here that I work with. And I'm like, do I need injury time? And he's like, well, does your knee hurt? And I'm like, not really. I'm just kind of freaking out. This is like going on in my head. And I'm like, I'm just freaking out, but there's not really any pain. And I was like, all right, can't give up injury time if I don't really need it. So we're just going to keep wrestling.
So you tore so there was no real pain. It was just kind of like I remember popping my knee and going, well, that's interesting. That there's a heat there.
Oh yeah.
It felt like it was held together with chewing gum, but there wasn't a pain.
So like in the match, the Heil match, I didn't really in all of the matches, you don't really feel anything. The only thing is that like there's no pain, but there's like some instability I had to consider. I couldn't put a lot of weight on my leg, couldn't make hard cuts like the 2-step stuff that I like to do. And then there was pain between the matches. So like Saturday morning before the finals, I couldn't bend my knee past 90 degrees. So we took a lot of time loosening that out. And at this point, like I remember telling our trainer, like whatever's going on, don't tell me. I don't want to know. Like I'm wrestling. I'd rather just not know. And like, I'm just glad that he told me that, because like I knew if I knew there was something wrong, I would have wrestled differently. But if I just believe like, I don't have meniscus or whatever, like meniscus isn't a big deal, I would have been fine.
I was rewatching the match last night, get ready for the interview, and I saw the moment when you did it, and I didn't obviously I wasn't there, so I wouldn't know. But I'm looking at you, and I'm looking at you, look at the coaches, and like you could tell you're like looking at your knee, looking at the coaches, looking at the knee, you're like I don't know what to do, and you're like screw it, I'm just gonna wrestle.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
And honestly, that was just the thought process. Was like, no, you don't need injury time. It's not worth giving up the escape. Just keep going.
Yeah. So moving on from the injury, so from what you've told me, you and I had some good conversations, leading up to today. And, I've heard a lot of the interviews that you've done post NCAAs. And I hear 3 things come from you when it comes to what you attribute your success to this year. 1 is your confidence in yourself. 2 is trusting your coaches that they have the utmost belief in you and what that means. And then also the impact that Mike Gray has had on you. Those are the 3 things that I've really heard in all the stories and all the things we've talked about. So no better example of how those things work together, I think, than your match against Dean Heil. Scores tied and your coaches tell you to cut them with, under a minute left. And, you guys were looking at each other, trying to figure out what the right call is. Ultimately, you guys decided to cut them. You trusted their judgment. And then seconds later after you did, so you trusted their judgment. Seconds later, you trust yourself. You're right back in on a leg, secure the takedown, and then ride him out for the big win. So that moment finishes up with you jumping into Mike Gray's arms. So tell me what those 3 things mean to you and what Mike Gray's impact has been on your success and development this past year.
So talking about the mental toughness stuff and the belief in my coaches, it's honestly the mental toughness side is I always thought was like the big thing I was missing, aside from being super weak.
Aside from being what? I didn't hear that.
Super weak.
Oh, no, that's not true. You got a weird strength. I've wrestled you before. That's not true. Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't mean to interrupt.
No, you're good. Just throw it out there. But yeah, I always thought I was weak, which definitely was something I made up with this year. But I never had like the mental edge. Like I was always able to give like 90%. And when you give 90%, it feels like you've maxed out. But like really every day you just leave like a little bit, and you don't even realize it. But then you tell yourself you're doing everything, and you just keep leaving a little bit and a little bit and a little bit and a little bit. Well, Mike was able to draw that out of me, mostly just by torturing me in practice. And like I can't tell you when the switch clicked, but he sat me down and we had like a conversation. This was early in the year, where he's like, "Listen, I know you don't get tired a lot, and you're used to being better than guys because of how high school is and all this stuff, but you can't be afraid to get tired in practice." He's like, every day, if you're leaving the room like crying, just miserable, your legs feel like they're giving out, like just in pain from the exhaustion, like that's when you've done a good job. So like my mentality changed from like getting better to getting better, but getting every bit out of me. So it was like, all right, I have to do everything perfect. That was always like the mindset. But it was like, I have to do everything perfect, even when I feel like I'm going to die. And I think, obviously I'm exaggerating a little bit, but
No. But the verbiage and the way that you kind of say that is important because now that obviously no one's going to die in a wrestling room. I hope no one dies in a wrestling room. Okay. But what I'm saying is we now have to kind of, the younger generation of this sport, okay, is going to look to you. And that's something that I want to talk about a little bit later. But the younger generation of this sport has to know that there can be perfection even in exhaustion, right? And that is simply a decision, right? It's a decision that we are going to make on a daily basis to not just be perfect, but be perfect when all systems are failing. Yeah. and that's really, it's tough. It's really, really tough. No one likes it. Okay, but you have to be able to put yourself in those positions as much as possible. That's awesome, man. I knew Coach Gray was a great coach, technically, and I'm so happy that he's really kind of spearheading at least your development mentally there too. That's really good stuff.
Yeah. So he because like that's one thing I think is super important about coaching is I don't care like how self-motivated you can take the Jordan Burroughs, Kyle Schneider. Let's take Kyle Schneider. Kyle Schneider makes everyone he wrestles super tired, right? Mm-hmm. As motivated as Kyle is, I still think you need someone who can like push you the little extra because you can only push yourself so far, and then you need someone to sit there and tell you, I think, like you need to give this a little more, and you'll do it because you like. I think that's what makes people great is the fact that they can respond. Like I need to do more, I can do more.
And you see it. He has that person. Tervel is quite obviously the person for Kyle that is just pushing him just a little bit past what he thinks his limits are. And Snyder, Kyle, or not Kyle Snyder, excuse me, Brian Snyder is doing the same thing with JB and the guys in Lincoln. So it's cool to see that. All of these guys really do have somebody that they all look at and go, okay, this guy's going to push me just a little bit further. I remember Ed Ruth, right? Ed Ruth did an interview after his third NCAA title, and they said, man, Ed, you've accomplished just about as much as you can accomplish in this sport in college. What's next? What do you want to do next? And he looked at the camera deadpan and said, I just want to get a takedown in the wrestling room against Casey Cunningham, man. I don't know what y'all are talking about, but I can't even get a damn takedown in the room, man. So there's always so the cool part about it is, there's these little hacks, Mike likes to call them hacks and these little things that you can kind of do to help yourself get better. But man, having a great coach that's willing to put their foot in your behind, it's pretty invaluable.
Yeah.
And I think that's great too to hear, obviously like you coming out to be as one of the top 3 recruits in the country. Everybody was talking about how great you were going to transition to college, things like that. But to still, even as talented as you are, come to a room and have a guy push you like that. And, actually you probably, including the RTC, you have a lot of guys that could really, really push you. You really can't say that very often. It's something that, I know we can get into later talking more, but those of you that are listening, think about this, in the same room at one given time, you can have, Jordan Oliver, Kyle Dake, you, Vito, every other guy that's on that team, and in the RTC pushing each other. Like, I can't imagine what those 3-man groups look like. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've had a lot of ass whoopings from Jordan.
but that brings me back to something that you told me. It's like, these kids that are developing, they have to realize that they got to get their ass kicked if they want to kick ass.
You need to. You can't my dad always. It's one thing that's funny. My dad used to always tell me. He's like, as good as you want to be, you can't ever be the best guy in your own practice. Because then you have no one to beat you. Because there's 2 kinds of improvement, ways you can improve, I think. And one of them is all right, so say I'm the best guy in my practice room and I can beat everybody. Well, it's like you try and separate it from beating them all by a couple points to blowing it out, right?
Right.
But then you need the flip side where, like, all right, say I'm the best guy in the room. Well, I need someone to come here and beat me up a little bit so I can be like, all right, this is what doesn't work. Like, that was something that was really important for me getting to wrestle with Jordan a lot this year, was I learned what worked and what didn't work. Because, like, sometimes you get in a room with guys, like college guys, and something that works on 90% of the room, you're like, oh, this move works. You get to wrestle with Jordan, and then you realize, like, man, I can't even, like, all right, just let's talk hypotheticals. I have a ready single leg. Say I hit that on everyone in the room. I'm like, man, I must have a great ready single leg. But then I can't finish it with Jordan. That has exposed a new flaw in my game that I need to get better at. You know what I mean?
Hey, I got to stop you there. What works right now, and what more specific? Or let me rephrase: before the injury, what did not work?
Before what? I'm sorry, you broke up.
Before your injury.
Before the injury.
What didn't work? What was not working technically?
Just because it's the same guys in the room throughout the year, you kind of figure out how to make things work. But when Jordan got here, I remember, like, at first nothing did. And it wasn't because I had to, like, find different ways. I think that's a mistake a lot of kids make. It's like, oh, this move doesn't work on this guy. It must not work. Like, that's not true. Otherwise, nothing works. Like, you can find a guy where your best move doesn't work on him. You just need to make it better. So, like, I was hitting a lot of single legs, high crotches, like elbow control stuff, the drags, all, like, my whole offense. At first, none of it worked. I couldn't get anything going. I'm like, man, what is going on? But literally in the course of 2 months, I went from, like, not being able to get anything going to, like, breaking them open, getting the shots, like, getting the finishes sometimes, you know what I mean? And it's obviously part of it is just because you wrestle with them so much, but part of it is just, like, if you didn't know it didn't work, you never felt the need to make it better.
Right.
But because it was failing, you, like, just by being an active participant in your own sport, you find that it's not working and you make the adjustments to make it work.
If you're the best guy in the room, you need to find another room. I think that's something that we hear a lot about in, with club rooms. You know, I know a lot of people, especially having a wrestling club myself and Mike being involved in one for a lot of times. A lot of people like to be the big fish in a small pond. They don't like coming to a new room and getting their ass kicked. But that's kind of the whole point is, if you're walking into the room and getting a beat down, you should be going finding the first person at the front desk and be like, how do I sign up? Because I need somebody to beat me up every day.
Yeah, I think you got to find, like, a good medium, obviously, especially for young kids.
Yeah.
If they don't, sometimes you got to let them be like big fish, small pond a little bit,
sure.
I think, just to reel them in, because it's hard. You can't just start out an 8-year-old getting messed up every day. He'll hate it. But at the same time, I think a perfect, like, situation is something in the middle. It's pretty close to what I have, because I have guys like Jordan and Kyle, like Jordan Oliver and Kyle Dake, who, no matter what, like Kyle, no matter how well I compete, no matter how bad he's feeling, he's going to beat me. There's nothing I can do about it. And then you got guys like Jordan, who, no matter where, like, some days he beats me, but I can get the takedowns on him. I'm not saying I beat him in the room all the time, but, like, there's days where we have our days, and I can get takedowns and he can get takedowns, and, like, we battle. And I think that's good. But then there's also guys